I was 24 years old, sitting in a real estate class in a large hotel room when I heard a story that changed the direction of how I invested in real estate. You see, up to that point, all of the successful investors that I was looking up to were growing fast, owned hundreds of properties, and were always striving for more and more and more. But this story changed my idea of what success as a real estate investor actually looks like, and I'm so glad I heard it when I was still a beginner. Now, I want to share the same story with you. One summer, 3 real estate investing friends and their spouses decided to take a trip to Europe. As beginner investors, they had become good friends while chatting every day on the Bigger Pockets forums. And now, 15 years later, they had each become successful in their own way in real estate. The first couple, let's call them Liz and Tom, are in their early 50s, and they live, invest, and self-manage their properties in a small town suburb of St. Louis, Missouri. During the early years, they bought 10 single-family houses, one by saving up down payments and using mortgage financing. Then in the later years, they used all of their rental property cash flow, plus some extra savings from their jobs, to aggressively pay off their mortgages early. Their houses now produce $10,000 per month or $120,000 per year in positive cash flow. And because of that, they've both been able to retire early from their careers. They also have a lot of free time because their houses only require a few hours per month for some bookkeeping and other small tasks. The second couple, let's call them Tiffany and Darius, are in their early 40s. They live in Oakland, California, but they invest long distance in North Carolina using a property manager. 15 years after starting, they now own several small multifamily apartments that total 50 units. Originally, they invested in their own backyard by house hacking and renting their former residences in Oakland. But as prices increased and their wealth grew, they decided to cash out and trade their money in their California properties for better cash flow with these 50 units in North Carolina. The end result is they have a very stable portfolio with their equity plus some long-term mortgages and about $10,000 per month or $120,000 per year in cash flow, very similar to Liz and Tom. Because Tiffany and Darius have a competent local property manager, they also only spend a few hours per month on their real estate. This frees up time for them to spend more time with their kids and also to work part-time only on projects they're passionate about. Couple number 3, let's call them Lauren and Mike, are in their late 40s. They live in Nevada, but they own properties all over the country. 15 years after starting, they now own over 1,000 rental units and they're continuing to grow. They began with smaller rentals in one location, but in the last few years, they've built a team and expanded their business. They use a technique called syndication to pool money from a larger group of investors that allows them to buy larger real estate deals. As Lauren and Mike have found out, syndications are a way to supercharge your wealth building and cash flow. As general partners, they have become multimillionaires, and just their portion of the cash flow produces $60,000 per month or over $700,000 per year. So Lauren and Mike clearly make the most money out of all 3 couples. But everyone can afford this nice European vacation. After all, trips like this are why they started trying to make money in the first place. But the story gets a little more interesting as they approach the end of the trip. All 3 couples are having a fabulous time. So great, in fact, that couple number 1, Liz and Tom, proposed that they all extend their trip for a few more weeks to continue exploring. Liz and Tom have tenants who automatically deposit their rent online each month. And when they do have a maintenance problem, they simply send a text to their local contractor who solves the problem for them. And with no debt or immediate plans to buy more properties, they have very little pressure and their schedules are amazingly flexible. Couple number 2, Tiffany and Darius, check their calendars. Because their kids are on summer break from school and because they don't have full-time jobs, their schedules are pretty flexible. Their property manager is in control of the day-to-day issues at their properties, and without any major financing or remodeling projects looming, they happily agree to extend the trip as well. But couple number 3, Lauren and Mike, have some challenges. They want to extend the trip and they can easily afford to stay longer, but they have some projects back at home that require their attention. For example, due diligence on a new apartment complex acquisition has raised some serious questions and they need to meet some people on the ground to figure it out. Remodeling contractors on another project are waiting for Lauren's guidance on some design choices. Their corporate bookkeeper and administrator need some help on some unresolved issues. While it's not technically required, they really need to attend an upcoming conference to meet some potential equity investors so they can raise money for some of their upcoming deals. With so much on their plate, Lauren and Mike regretfully declined to extend their trip. Hearing that story was like a light bulb moment for me as a new investor. It wasn't that Lauren and Mike had a bad business, In fact, they were financially very successful. But the story made clear to me that financial or business success doesn't automatically translate into meeting your life goals. When it comes to your life goals, you have to ask yourself the question, what do I actually need to live a good life? And you have to ask yourself, what things aren't necessary and are just getting in the way? If your version of a good life requires the most money possible, then a big, fast-growing business could get you there. But if instead a good life simply requires enough money while maximizing the most valuable asset, your time, a business like Lauren and Mike's is the last thing you need. Growth always comes at a cost. Size and complexity always come at a cost. And the most expensive cost is losing control of your personal time and flexibility. After hearing that story many years ago, I started looking for new role models in real estate investing, and not just the people with the most properties or the most money. It turns out my new heroes, what I now call small and mighty investors, are everywhere. They might even be your next door neighbor without you even knowing about it. Because there is a downside to being a small and mighty investor. Unfortunately, you may not get famous on HGTV and you won't be able to post pictures of yourself on Instagram on your private jet. But as a consolation prize, you simply get an amazing life of financial security, simplicity, and freedom that most people only dream of. You'll make plenty of money while avoiding the hassles and the risks that come with growing big. And interestingly, the small and mighty investors I know don't seem to worry that much about not being mega rich or famous. It seems they're too busy enjoying their lives.